You know that sudden, awful drop in your stomach when a letter comes home from school about an outbreak? Or maybe you just noticed a child intensely scratching their scalp or their arms. Well, it's a very specific kind of panic, isn't it? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're bringing out the digital whiteboard to systematically break down two of the most notorious childhood infestations out there: pediculosis, which we all know as head lice, and scabies. We're going to completely clear up the confusion and give you exactly the facts you need.
Here is our game plan for today. We'll be quickly hitting meeting the pests, spotting the symptoms, treatment protocols, environmental cleaning rules, and finally, the psychosocial impact.
Okay, let's dive right into section 1. Meet the pests.
So these two organisms are fundamentally different in both their behavior and their physiology. First up is Pediculus humanus capitis, the head louse. Now, this is an insect that lives exclusively right on the surface of the hair and the scalp. It feeds there, and honestly, an adult louse can actually survive for up to a month on a human host. Then you have Sarcoptes scabii, the scabies mite. And unlike that surface-dwelling louse, this mite actively burrows directly deep into the skin to lay its eggs. That one key difference, surface-dwelling versus skin burrowing, literally dictates absolutely everything else we're going to talk about today, from the symptoms they cause to how we ultimately defeat them.
Moving right along to section 2, spotting the symptoms.
Let's start with head lice and, bust a really common myth while we're at it. How do you actually distinguish stubborn lice eggs, which are called nits, from everyday dandruff? Well, it all comes down to their grip. Nits look like tiny white specks, kind of like dandruff, but they are firmly attached to the hair shaft. I mean, they hold on for dear life. If you try to brush them away and they literally do not budge, you're likely dealing with nits. Ordinary dandruff, on the other hand, that's just flaky skin, and it brushes off super easy.
Now let's compare that to scabies. Because that scabies mite is burrowing deep into the skin, the clinical presentation is a whole different ballgame. The absolute hallmark sign is these thin, pencil-like burrow marks. They're often sort of grayish-brown, and sometimes you can even spot a tiny black dot at the end where the mite is actually sitting. The body mounts a massive inflammatory response to the mites and their eggs, and that leads to intense, keep-you-up-all-night itching. What's also really fascinating from our source material is how this looks totally different depending on the kid's age. So for infants, the rash can be widespread across their entire body, usually showing up as pimples on the trunk. But in older children, it gets highly localized. You're mostly going to see it on the hands, wrists, genitals, and abdomen.
Section 3, treatment protocols. Let's talk about how we target these guys. So, the crucial point here is matching the treatment to the specific pest's location. For head lice, the go-to treatment is a 1% permethrin shampoo. You wash the hair, you aggressively use a nit comb to physically drag out those firmly attached nits we just talked about, and then, this is key, you repeat the whole process in about 7 days just to catch any newly hatched lice. Now, think about scabies for a second. Because those mites are hiding under the skin, a quick 1% shampoo just isn't going to cut it. We have to use a much stronger 5% permethrin cream, and this requires a full body application that literally has to sit on the skin for a massive 8 to 14 hours. After that, you repeat the treatment in 1 to 2 weeks. It's a way more intensive protocol, but hey, it's for a much more invasive pest. Before we jump to the next part, I need to give you a really vital warning about scabies treatment. The intense itching can and often does temporarily continue even after the treatment is 100% successful. You might be wondering, why on earth would that happen? It's because the itching is driven by the body's inflammatory response to the mites and their eggs, not just the live bugs themselves. Even when every single mite is eradicated, that immune response just takes a little time to calm down. So it's incredibly important that we don't automatically assume a treatment failed just because a child is still scratching a few days later. Give it a minute. All right, section 4, environmental cleaning rules. Listen, when an infestation hits, as a caregiver, you have this overwhelming, totally understandable urge to just bleach and clean absolutely everything in sight, right? Well, let's focus that energy, starting with some huge relief. Pets are not involved in transmission for either of these conditions. Dogs and cats are entirely off the hook. Both pediculosis and scabies are strictly human-to-human transmission issues. So please, you do not need to treat the family dog. Now, for head lice, here is your actionable, evidence-based environmental protocol. Notice how there's absolutely no need for those toxic environmental pesticide sprays? Step 1, simply wash clothing, towels, and bedding in hot water with detergent. Step 2,
bag up any of those unwashable items. And step 3, take combs, brushes, and hair accessories and either boil them for 10 minutes or soak them in a lice-killing product for an hour. Basically, just heavily focus on the items that came into direct, recent contact with the head.
And this perfectly illustrates why we bag those unwashable things, like a child's favorite stuffed animal. The magic number for lice is 14. You have to seal those unwashable items in a tightly closed plastic bag for exactly 14 days. Why? Well, our sources note that nits take about 7 to 12 days to hatch, and an adult louse simply can't live more than 48 hours without a human host. So, by sealing the bag for a full 14 days, you completely outlast the entire hatching life cycle. By day 14, the threat is quite literally starved out.
Now, shifting back to scabies. Environmental cleaning here also involves washing clothes and linens in hot water and vacuuming your carpets and furniture. But the critical number you absolutely need to remember for scabies management is 60. According to the strict instructions in our source material, all household members and close contacts of the infected person must be treated during and for a defined period of 60 days after the infection. Because scabies is so highly contagious through direct contact, casting this wide net of treatment is absolutely required. It ensures the mites don't just keep getting passed back and forth continuously within the family. Finally, Section 5, the psychosocial impact. Beyond the physical itch, we really have to recognize the sheer anxiety that these conditions cause. First and foremost, let's be incredibly clear. Getting an infestation absolutely does not reflect poor hygiene, bad character, or poor parenting. Anyone is at risk, period. However, because these conditions are visible, whether it's the intense scratching, the rash, or the visible nits right there in the hair, it can so quickly lead to teasing, bullying, or social isolation for a school-aged child. So as educators, caregivers, and health professionals, it is our job to fiercely maintain their privacy and avoid shaming the child. We also have to thoughtfully navigate those school no-nit policies. We need to support a child's swift return to the classroom rather than punishing them with unnecessary absences once proper, evidence-based treatment has already started. Which leaves us with this final, really vital question to ponder. How can we consistently balance effective medical eradication with protecting a child's self-esteem and social life? Understanding the clinical differences between a louse and a mite is obviously essential, but remembering the vulnerability of the kid experiencing it, well, that's what truly matters. Eradicating the bugs is only half the battle. Caring for the child's dignity is just as important. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.